Democrats denied the existence of Antifa. This is despite all available evidence and flies in the face of common sense. This is perhaps their most audacious lie yet. Please help me counter the Democrats' disinformation campaign by liking, upvoting, sharing, and commenting on my documentary. Thank you. God bless.
Antifa activist sentenced to nearly 6 years in jail for cracking a man's skull.
An unlawful assembly.
And Antifa is not, by the way, an actual organization with founders or leadership. It's a loose, decentralized term for a movement.
Simply put, Antifa is just short for anti-fascist, and they encompass anarchists, socialists, communists, and a lot of people in between there. There is no hierarchical organizational structure. It is primarily a movement and an ideology. There are no leaders, there are no assets, there are no bank accounts or revenue streams to go after either.
I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
We look at Antifa as more of an ideology or a movement than an organization.
There's no Antifa. This is an entirely imaginary organization. There is not an Antifa.
Like, I don't even know what Antifa is. There is no group.
It's not even like far-right groups like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. Compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
It isn't an organization. It is a in many ways mythology.
It's not like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, sort of defined terrorist organizations with leadership that leads violence.
It's not a highly organized movement. It's a moniker. It's not a unified group like the Proud Boys are. Things like Antifa are things that are thought up.
It's all in this guise of going after Antifa, which is nothing. There's no organization called Antifa.
Nobody's a member of Antifa because it doesn't exist. They are just declaring into existence something that doesn't exist.
There is no Antifa organization, so maybe that's good for social media, but it really is non-existent.
They exist on the internet in chat rooms and in 4chan and Discord and places like that, where they run discussion boards, trade tactics, documents, things like that. But none of them are called Antifa.
Saying that the Democrats are Antifa, and again, no one's really defined what that is. It's just some mythical thing out there that he thinks anybody that's opposed to him belongs to.
It is true. There's violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa? That's happening in Portland right now? That's
a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
Sir, there's videos everywhere online. There's fires and riots. They're throwing fireworks at federal officers. DHS is there. Look online. It gets crazy, Mr. Nadler.
Let's go! Fuck! Don't fucking use it! Don't!
Because if there really is no Antifa as an institution organization, then anybody who's associated with Antifa-like ideas, can be persecuted. All you have to do is say, prove you're not Antifa. Well, how can you prove a negative? And suddenly they're just going to be able to use that to justify suppressing speech, arresting people. I mean, nobody even knows what it is. The first person I ever heard use the word Antifa was Donald J. Trump.
The Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, was photographed a year ago holding up that book of the Antifa book, and that kind of went. He's been criticized a bit for that, and he deleted that image after my beating.
Was holding it up in support?
Yeah, he said this. He said something about like this book or Antifa strikes fear into the heart of Donald Trump.
Well, I guess you're definitely one of them people that are worried about being quote-unquote persecuted. Huh, Keith?
We've also now, in an executive order today, we've got the president describing Antifa, the anti-fascist, it's not even really a movement, the anti-fascist
tactics of a portion of the protest movement as a domestic terrorist organization. What is your reaction to those things? What do you think the appropriate response is to things like that?
Well, in normal times, we should and could expect that our courts would step in when asked to declare the legality or illegality of what the president is doing, because civics 101, we all know we designed our democracy through three co-equal branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the courts.
Oh yeah, Kamala, we're going to take your word for it. Your word salad, of which you're so horrible at. God, it's like listening to nails across a chalkboard. But yes, we remember when you tried to bail out rioters from Minneapolis. So your word doesn't mean shit to us. But here is another colleague of yours who actually has a little bit of honesty.
We got to hold together a coalition that goes from the never Trumpers to folks who might have marched with Antifa. That's a hard coalition.
You can just agree. FBI Director Kash Patel says one of the key areas the FBI has made rapid progress is the tracking of finances and command structures of anarchist groups like Antifa that have fomented unrest in American cities. He says that there are indications some support may be coming from overseas enemies and U.S. nonprofits that have tax exemption from the IRS. Seamus Berner from the Government Accountability Institute pointed fingers at networks like those tied to billionaire Neville Roy Singham, whose foreign cash flows have raised alarms about Chinese Communist Party involvement in stoking domestic unrest. For years, evidence has mounted that billionaire George Soros and his Open Society Foundation have funneled millions into groups overlapping with Antifa's agenda, fueling protests and division under the guise of social justice, connected to the Tides Foundation, which adds layers to this puzzle. Antifa International is effectively serving as its funding arm and pays for the legal defense of arrested anti-fascists anywhere in the world, including the US. In addition to attorney fees, court fines, and bail money covered by the defense fund, Antifa International foots the bill for emergency relocations, medical expenses, personal property damage, and even tactical gear. The international arm raises money through campaigns on Patreon, Fundraiser, and the Action Network.
We did apply for a grant from Soros at one point a long time ago. We actually did get a grant from them. There is going to be a need for thousands of people and then millions to come into the streets.
We're trying to meet with Tom Steyer. We've been talking to his assistant. We're meeting with his main advisor on impeachment. He has political ambitions that he may actually want to not be directly connected. In Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, this at a certain point dominates the national news. So it's very disruptive to the court.
The ultimate vision is for people to break with their comfort and come into the streets day after day, night after night, in the hundreds of thousands until the millions, and not leave until they have to step down. The thing about this is that we see that this is not going to happen through normal channels, because we are living in abnormal times. And the way we see this is that there is going to be a need for thousands of people and then millions to come into the streets and demand that the Trump-Pence regime must go.
Imagine if, let's put millions aside for a second, that there was 10 to 50,000 people demonstrating in those 5 cities, which if they were demonstrating there, I can tell you from history, it would be spreading like wildfire and so on. That number of people who were protesting, at first maybe every week and then every 3 days and then every other day, where people were coming after work and the streets were flooded every night from 5 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was probably among younger people, there'd be a few thousand who stayed overnight. And this was happening in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York. This at a certain point dominates the national news. This is just, cities are in a certain sense non-violent demonstrations, but that's still very disruptive to the court. That has international repercussions. Look at what's happening in the U.S.
Antifa International earned an endorsement from the Torch Anti-Fascist Network, a national-wide nexus in the U.S. with regional chapters all over America. Authorities consider Torch Network the most radical of American Antifa networks. Antifa International recommends that American Antifa activists become part of the Torch Network. The international outfit recruits followers to join nearby cells and will refer prospects and put them in contact with Antifa charters in their areas. If one doesn't exist, Antifa International teaches recruits how to set up a chat.
You know, for an organization that doesn't exist, I just think it's really odd how they're involved in all this criminality across the United States. They just don't exist. Sure, Democrats, we believe you.
They cheered them on, laughed and clapped as I was getting beaten. And then the other thing about the people showing up in numbers who don't engage in the violence is they are like literal human shields. They dress the same, so they make it easy for the few violent militants to melt back into the crowd.
Right.
Exactly. But basically, as a movement, they have essentially cells across the country that are semi-autonomous, united by an ideology of anarchy, anarcho-communism. So they draw from the DSA, they draw from various workers' unions, other anarchist groups. Like other terrorist entities, they have processes to radicalize sympathizers, essentially. They have their own literature as well.
You can get a little bit closer here and you can see I actually did come across an Antifa group in Boston that was handing out all sorts of Antifa propaganda. And that's the table that they handed out right there. Now, I happen to have some of the propaganda sitting on my desk that I picked up that day. So let me show you some of the literature I picked up that day directly from Antifa in Boston. This is a brochure called Burning the Bridges They're Building. This is a brochure about 8 things you can do to stop ICE. This is a brochure about organizing radical power on college campuses to literally take over buildings. This is a brochure that will teach you how to dress up in mass to go commit illegal action on protests. This is a brochure called I Don't Shoot First, I Bash Back. This is a brochure about protesting in the streets. This is a brochure about sabotaging your workplace. And my personal favorite one was this one, the Do-It-Yourself Occupation Guide, where they teach you how to take over a building and squat in a building and cut all the phone lines and stuff like that. Actually, you can find this over on my Substack, Carlin, Karlyn.substack.com. You can also look up digital copies of any of the things I'm showing you on the internet if you want to do more research, but that's not all. Now, I also just went undercover at the New York Anarchist Book Fair in New York City a couple of weeks ago. And that might not seem like anything. It's a book fair, right? But book fairs are where Antifa and far-left activists hand out a lot of their propaganda. And I have a lot of propaganda to show you that I got there, too. This is a handout that I got from a workshop at the New York Anarchist Book Fair where they're literally teaching you how to identify ICE agents when they come to town to try to prevent ICE from deporting people that are here illegally. This is a sticker that I got at one of the talks saying, "Fight ICE with fire," implying that they're going to be setting things on fire. I don't know, that kind of sounds illegal to me. Here's a guide about how to disable a closed circuit television like security cameras. Here's a guide about accomplices, not allies, because they're looking for people to go commit crimes with them. Here's a guide about how to survive a felony trial. Here's a guide about how it's safer to actually provoke the police at protests. It's called It's Safer at the Front. This is a whole guide about getting ICE out of LA and how to prevent ICE from doing their jobs. Again, those things all seem illegal to me. This is a giant protest guide. This is a really big protest guide about how to commit all sorts of crimes and stuff like that when you're out doing direct action with Antifa. This is a brochure about not making demands because they're just going to, look at that, set things on fire. This is a guide about, how to use things to, crowbars and like, wire cutters and stuff like that. I can't imagine why Antifa would want to do those things. Here's a brochure. I mean, they're pretty like direct in their messaging sometimes if I can get the green screen to work. Keep sabotaging shit. And there's all sorts of fire there. And just in case, you get arrested, they do have a de-arrest primer. And just in case, if you were wondering if I was actually undercover with Antifa, I got this sticker, "I want you, Antifa." I think they're being very clear.
And so it's much more organized than people give them credit for. They think of them as just, people showing up to fight on the street. There's meaning to that violence, and there's literature to back it up. And they have they actively recruit people to join the movement. So I've been asked, do you think the federal authorities should step in? My response is, I think it's come to the point that they do, because with Antifa, it's beyond what local authorities can do, because a lot of these people, a lot of them are in Portland, from Portland, but a lot of them come from, for example, from Eugene, from Seattle, from neighboring areas that have other Antifa people come in to participate in the violence for that day or to help out. And then they go back to where they're from. So they're coming in and out of jurisdictions. It makes it hard for one local body of authorities to address it. I think the DOJ needs to step in. I think it's gotten to that point.